Okay, right now we're going to do a game that came out only 4 years ago in 2022. It's Turrican 2, the AGA version, which is an enhanced port of the 1995 DOS version of Turrican 2. This is the first game that I've covered that requires fast RAM. For the floppy version, you need 2 megabytes of fast RAM. A lot of people think that not having fast RAM was one of the things that hindered AGA the most, because in some instances, the base 1200 is really only running at 50% of its capacity, and you add some fast RAM and it does 100%. So this is a great example of a game that utilizes that and shows you what it would have been like if the base 1200 would have come with some fast RAM. So I've done a video before that I'll link in the description of the original OCS ECS Turrican 2. It had some great programming and really pushed the OCS ECS machines. So this game does the same for AGA. So let's get into it. First of all, if we take out the bit planes, you'll see the nice 24-bit copper sky in the background. So this level is in 7-bit planes. Let's see them all. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if we look at the palette visualizer, we've got 128 colors here, and then some of them are copperized, and then the bottom HUD is just 16 colors. So overall here, we've got 401 colors available. And if you go back to the game at this particular point, it's 179 colors. If we throw on the blitter visualizer and then step into action, then you can see all the enemies are being blit, and the items and the screen scrolling in, the tiles, and at the top too. Your shots are being blit, and when you hold it down, this is all being blit too. So for sprites in this level, we just have the player character. So sprite 0 fetches a 32 wide 3-color version of him, but then when you put sprite 1 on, it becomes attached and you get all 15 colors, 32 wide. And then you've also got this mega weapon here, which is sprite 2 and 4. So the waterfalls are just color cycled. If you put the palette visualizer on, you can see these colors here that keep changing. So with the copper visualizer, you can see a few things. Right here is the copper split for the 8-directional scrolling. You can see it move. And then right down here is the copper sky gradient. So color 0 changes down the screen. And then they also change color 0 here. I'm not sure if that's because with 24-bit colors, you need to do more than one copper move, or if there's another reason for that. But yeah, both of these areas are changing color 0. Okay, this next level has some cool changes. If you put the palette visualizer on, you can see the water there that's color cycling. And then the most interesting thing is this background, the red. When you scroll, it acts as a parallax. So that background, even though there's 7-bit planes, is just on bit plane 0, because when you deactivate that bit plane, then it disappears. The most interesting thing, though, is that when you put on the blitter visualizer, watch this. You see all the weird blits? Well, notice that they're only blitting where you can see through to that background. When I jump, you can see it easily. So those are called masked blits because it's masking all the areas that don't need the blit. Like right here, this wall, but then with the hole, if I jump, you can see it does it right there. So with masked blits, you can lessen the blitter activity and have more DMA for other things. So color 1 is that background color, and just holding it in one spot like this, you can see that it turns red and then dark as the red fluctuates in the background. So here we are at the first shmup level, and again, it's in 7-bit planes. Here's the palette visualizer. Let's watch it move for a second. Looks really nice. Let's pause it here. So if you saw my other Turrican 2 video, you know in this level, the background is being like masked blit, sort of like the last level we just saw. But with the blitter visualizer on here, you can see it's just the enemies that are being blit. So how is this background being done? Well, let me pause it again. And if we take off all the bit planes, we can see the secret. It's sprite 0 and 1. But not only that, if we take all the sprites off and all the bit planes off, look at this. The copper gradient itself makes up a lot of the background. So here's just the copper gradient background, and then there's the sprites on top without width. So here it's playing with just the copper gradient background, and here it's with the copper gradient background and with sprite 0. And here's the copper gradient background in sprite 1. And then here's both sprites. And here's everything. And you'll notice that your ship is not a sprite, but it is also being blit. Okay, with the copper visualizer, you can see here's sprite 0 position, sprite 1 position, 0, 1. So they're both those sprites are multiplexed across the screen. And then vertically, the sprite positions are here, 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 and here. So these are the areas where the extra graphics are. But if you just have the copper gradient, for example, here and here, then the sprites aren't repositioned there. Now in the second shmup level, look at all this action. Yet it always maintains 50 frames per second down in the corner, you can see. So fast RAM for the win. So how is the background done in this level? If you take the bit planes off, this is just the background. And if you take the sprites off, then yes, it's sprites. But instead of horizontally multiplexing them across the screen, sprite 0 is 24 pixels across. Then sprite 1 is 64. So they've changed the sprite fetch for 64 wide in this level. And then you've got sprite 2 64, sprite 3 64, sprite 4 64, and then one more 24 and sprite 5 to get to the total of 304 of the visible area. So here's how it looks with the sprite visualizer on. So this last shmup level gives a 3-layer parallax look in the background there. So here's just sprite 0, and here's just sprite 1. But when you combine them, you get that. So the game is very impressive. I recommend you to check it out. It's free. You can download it. Just search Turrican 2 AGA. It was programmed from scratch and has a lot of enhancements to the DOS version. It's got extra parallax. It's got extra animations. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. I appreciate it as always. Till next time, take care.